That person moved on with their life a long time ago, and you're still arguing with them in your head. At 3 in the morning, in traffic, over lunch. And the worst part is, you don't always notice when you've gone back there again. This isn't just a good memory, and it isn't just resentment. It's your brain stuck in a mode it doesn't know how to leave. While you're watching this, it may already be opening another old conversation. Let's look at why this happens, and what you can do about it in 15 minutes. Stop for a second. Before we go further, here's one uncomfortable fact. 73% of people regularly replay past conflicts, every week, but only 2% know the neurobiological reason behind it. In a few minutes, you'll understand it better than most people. Psychologists call this rumination, but the term matters less than what's actually happening inside. Your brain wasn't built for happiness first. It was built to keep you alive. That's why it can treat social threat almost like physical danger. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger, UCLA, 2012. Participants were placed in an MRI scanner and shown faces of people who had rejected them. The DACC became active, the same area involved in physical pain. To the brain, "I was humiliated" can register almost like "I was hurt." That's why an argument from 3 years ago can still sting. It's not weakness. It's more like an old wound that never fully closed. Your brain keeps going back there, as if it's trying to finally fix it. But the conflict isn't there anymore. It stayed inside you. In 1927, psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik was sitting in a cafe in Vienna. She noticed that waiters remembered open orders better than completed ones. She later tested this in the lab. Unfinished tasks were remembered about twice as well. An argument without an ending works the same way. To the brain, it's an open order. Think of a browser tab you never closed. It quietly eats memory. At night, in the morning, on an ordinary day, you may think you're focused on something else, but the background process keeps running, and it won't stop until your brain gets some sense of closure. Now here's the question that feels unpleasant. The person you're arguing with in your head, are they thinking about you at all? The statistic is harsh. In 89% of cases, no, not at all. You're spending your health on a war where you're the only one fighting. The French have a phrase, l'esprit de l'escalier. It means staircase wit, the perfect reply that comes too late. You've already left, the door is closed, and then the line appears. Perfect. That isn't random. There's a clear neurobiological reason for it. During conflict, cortisol interferes with the prefrontal cortex. That's the part that helps you choose words, hold logic, and build arguments. You're not being stupid in an argument. In that moment, clear thinking is harder to access. That's why the best reply often shows up 20 minutes later, when it's already too late. So you return to that conversation later with your head finally working. Now you're precise, calm, convincing. Now you win, except the other person isn't there. Only their image in your mind is. And you're not arguing with a person anymore. You're arguing with a ghost, sometimes for years. Gilovich and Medvec, Psychological Review, 1994. They asked people what they regretted most. Not only failures or mistakes, often it was what they hadn't said. "I should have answered differently," became one of the main sources of lasting regret. Mental rehearsals are the brain's attempt to fix the past after the fact. It notices the regret and tries to help, in its own way, but it picks the wrong tool. It's like treating a burn by constantly scratching it. The more you touch it, the more it hurts, even though stopping feels almost impossible. Here's the part people rarely say out loud. You can be angry at a real person because of an argument that never actually happened. They may have forgotten it long ago, while you meet them carrying years of stored-up irritation. And real relationships start to suffer because of a war that exists only in your head. Who gets stuck in these loops most often? Not weak people, and not failures. Perfectionists, introverts, people who are highly sensitive to rejection. Often they're people who care deeply about being understood. That can be the price of depth. Now let's talk about the body. What happens while you replay that conversation again? Cortisol doesn't always have time to drop between rumination episodes. The tension stays. It's like keeping your fist clenched all day. The muscle never rests. Over time, sleep, memory, immunity, and recovery start to suffer. An Ohio University study. Ruminators get sick 34% more often. Not because they're weaker, Their immune system is under strain more often. An imaginary argument can show up in the body in very real ways. Not as a nice metaphor, but through stress, hormones, and biochemistry. Ethan Kross, professor at the University of Michigan, the book Chatter, 2021. He studied inner dialogue for 20 years and noticed something important. When you think I, me, and to me, the pain moves closer. It's like looking at a wound through a microscope. It looks huge. But if you switch to third person, for example, what would Alexei do? Some distance appears between you and the experience. You're no longer only a participant. You become an observer. And an observer can notice what a person inside the conflict simply can't see. Here's the paradox that irritates a lot of people. The harder you try not to think about the argument, the more often it comes back. Harvard research. Suppressing thoughts increases rumination by 40%. That's why just don't think about it often makes things worse. Labeling works better than suppression. Not just, I'm angry, but something more precise. It hurts because I wasn't heard. UCLA research. Precise emotion labeling reduces amygdala activity by 30%. The amygdala works like an internal alarm. The right word helps turn the volume down. Why can humiliation work better than anger? Because anger is often on the surface. Humiliation is closer to the root. The brain may replay the argument not because of anger, but because self-worth was hit. Until you name the real source of the pain, the alarm will keep turning back on. Now for the most useful tool, let's call it closing the file. Remember the Zeigarnik effect? The brain keeps unfinished things active, so you need to give it an ending. Not a perfect one, just one that works. Don't wait for an apology or a rematch. Create an ending yourself. James Pennebaker, University of Texas, 30 years of research. Take a piece of paper and write everything you wanted to say in that argument. No censoring, no polished wording. Everything that built up. You don't need to send it. Your brain needs the signal, it has been said. People who wrote about painful events for 15 minutes a day for 4 days in a row, visited doctors less often, slept better, and got stuck in the past less. Not pills, not years of talking. Sometimes it starts with 15 minutes and a pen. Pennebaker called this expressive writing. It helps reorganize the experience. But there's a point where many people quit. You start writing, the anger rises, and it feels like things got worse. That doesn't necessarily mean it failed. This is often what the beginning of working with pain looks like. Try writing for 5 more minutes after you want to stop. Still, this method may not help everyone, especially people who write to relive the pain, not to finish the story. The guideline is simple. After writing, you should feel lighter, not heavier. If you feel heavier, you may not be closing the file. You may be opening it wider. And one last thing, the most uncomfortable idea in this whole conversation. Some conflicts can't be closed. They can only be accepted as unfinished. Not everyone will explain themselves. Not every situation will get a clean ending. If the brain demands closure where none is coming, it suffers again and again. Accepting something unfinished doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes it's the only way to take back control. You tell your brain, yes, the file is open, but I'm not going to live inside it anymore. And in that moment, you stop being held hostage by someone else's answer. Now, 3 steps, simple and concrete. You can do the first one right now while watching this video. Name in one word what exactly hurt you in that argument. Not everything. One word: humiliation, betrayal, invisibility. Step 2. Tonight. 15 minutes, paper, and a pen. Write the argument in third person. He said, she felt, he wanted. Not to send, to finish it, for your own brain. Then decide, this file is closed, or you accept that it will stay open. The third step is the most unpleasant. Ask yourself, if that person knew how much time you've spent on these arguments, would they feel guilty? Or would they feel satisfied? The answer will quickly show you whether this deserves even one more evening. Your brain isn't the enemy. It's just stuck in survival mode. It keeps fighting for you, even though the war itself ended long ago. The soldier is still in the jungle, armed, facing a ghost. Your job is to tell him, it's over. You can come home. Rumination isn't a character trait. It's a learned way of reacting. At some point, it may have helped you survive or avoid repeating a mistake. but a pattern can change once you understand how it works. Nolan Hoeksema spent 30 years showing that these patterns can change. People who replay old arguments aren't always stuck in the past. Often they're stuck in the future they expected but never got. In the conversation where they were finally heard, understood, and told they were right. That isn't weakness. It's an unmet need to matter. The difference between people who get stuck and people who move on isn't always willpower, character, or luck. Often it's whether they gave their brain away to finish the story. Now you have 3 ways to do that. And finally, the hardest question. Every hour of rumination cuts cognitive productivity by 29%. If this happens every day, you're giving a huge part of your attention to an old argument. Not to a real enemy, to the image of someone who left the situation long ago. Tonight, your brain may open that same conversation again, and you may find yourself back there at 3 in the morning. But now you have a choice you didn't have before. Not to argue better, to step out of the argument, name the emotion, write the conversation, accept what can't be closed. It isn't magic, it's a way to show your brain where the exit is. And if this video reminded you of a specific person, save it. Not for them. Save it for the night when your brain tries to restart the old war.